There's an idea in my scripture, the Jewish Bible, that one of the primary prohibitions is against the making of idols. What is an idol? It's something that is seen as being all-powerful, that is made by the hands of man. And that's artificial general intelligence. General intelligence means omniscient. Artificial means made by man. So all that artificial general intelligence is idolatry. And we know that people have been tempted by idolatry. There was a time in the past when you could only reach an audience like this through audio. That's a less deep form of connection. To reach that breadth of distance, we needed to be more superficial. And before that, we had to have written words, which are more superficial. And before that, we couldn't even reach broad audience like that. We have to speak in words to someone there. The problem is that when information can travel fast, it's good that it travels fast, but if it travels outside of context, then people become unable to speak.
Exactly.
Because they can't use the context that they rely on. Important part of the project of Plurality is how do we restore social context? How do we keep the awareness of who it is that we're talking to and why things are meaningful to people?
Glen Weyl-san, welcome to Pivot.
No, it's my pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
So I love reading your book. You're co-author of Radical Markets. You're an economist, founder of Radical Change, and also you lead the Microsoft Research Plurality Technology.
That's right. I'm on sabbatical from there right now because I'm touring around the world with Audrey Tong for this new book.
Wonderful.
Yes, we'll talk about.
Is this your first time in Japan?
My third.
What's your impression of Japan so far?
Oh, I love Japan. I always love being here. It's such a special thing to meet another culture that's so different on terms of equality. So much of the world is trying to sort of be like the United States in some way. And things here are very, very different, but there's no sense of envy. There's a sense of meeting the other on equality and learning from each other. And that's really what the work is all about. So
interesting. What's the biggest difference? The democracy, the system, or technology? What's the biggest difference you have realized so far?
I mean, you always start from the cultural level, the sense of respect for everything that I think comes out of the Shinto tradition, the sense of honoring and care and precision is something very special about Japanese culture. It's also very interesting how much is below the surface. It's often hard for me as a Westerner to know when someone is being polite because they actually don't want to do something with you versus someone's being polite because they don't want to ask too much of you.
Okay.
And I've misread in both directions many times.
You should go to Kyoto. So, there's more unhidden rules and unhidden culture and manners.
Yeah, I did go to Kyoto last time in January. I took my daughters to Nara Park, and that probably was the most extreme example I've ever seen because there are deer everywhere, and there's no deer poop anywhere. And in the United States, if you had deer everywhere, the whole thing would be covered in deer poop.
Sure.
But somehow, and you don't even see them, there are people or whatever, or maybe the deers use toilets, I don't know.
I don't know.
And the deer bow to you as well.
Yes.
So only in Japan.
Okay, so let's talk about your new book, Plurality.
Please.
I read it, maybe the latest version, but I know it's updating every day, every second.
Yes, absolutely, yeah.
So in the Japanese version, it will be out maybe this year, or maybe in December.
It just went on sale yesterday.
Okay.
Yeah, for pre-order.
Pre-order, okay. And I highly recommend to our audience. It's an excellent book. So
it's actually very interesting. 90% of all copies of English version that have sold in the world have sold in Japan.
90%?
90%.
That's crazy.
It's massively more popular in Japan than anywhere else on the planet.
Why is that?
You tell me. I'm not the Japanese.
Maybe, so Audrey Tan is extremely popular co-author.
Yeah.
And Taiwan, we kind of have a good relationship right now and have kind of envy them for digital democracy, which we'll talk about. Maybe that's the reason.
Yeah, well, you don't need to envy. You can do it yourself very soon.
Right.
Actually, running in the election for the governor of Tokyo, I don't know if you know, was Ano-san.
Ano-san, yes.
Ano-san
I interviewed him right this spot.
No political experience before, a month ahead, came in with 150,000 votes. So maybe that shows the appetite that maybe the leaders here can hear something about.
That's right. Did you meet Ano-san?
I did, absolutely. And I also just met with the mayor here in the city who is very interested in all of this and maybe can learn from Ano-san. So,
wow.
Yeah.
So let's talk about plurality. What's the definition of plurality?
It means technology that lets us work with people across social differences, with people different from us. And here in Shibuya, the mayor has had for 20 years now a slogan that says, I don't know what it is in Japanese, but the city that makes strength from difference.
Ah, yes.
And that's plurality. So maybe it should just be Shibuya, the name of the book, instead of plurality.
Do you see any similar cities in the United States or similar governors, similar politicians who are...
Absolutely. The state of Colorado has been a wonderful place for us to work with under the leadership of Governor Jared Polis. Michigan has also been a good place. And in Boston, where I live, we have a Taiwanese mayor, Taiwanese American mayor, and her chief information officer is a big part of the plurality movement. So we have many people in many places.
Is it different from diversity, or there are similarities between two words?
Plurality is to diversity as the steam engine is to coal. So diversity is the fuel, but plurality is what harnesses it.
I see. Since you mentioned tech, I think it's a common understanding that technology is kind of undermining democracies these days. When you go onto X, there's a lot of hate speeches, fake news. People are kind of sick of technology, and they think that it's not good for democracy. What's your take on that?
Well, look, there's pro-social media and there's anti-social media. Just having social media doesn't tell you which one it is. Just like there's nuclear energy in a nuclear bomb, right? And we believe in making pro-social media. Unfortunately, that's not always the incentives that the industry has. That's not always the focus that the industry has. But we think we can change that. And we're planning to do that. We're working with Frank McCourt, a billionaire in the United States, to buy TikTok and to turn it into a cooperative built on these plurality principles.
So do you think we can improve or make use of technology in a more better way?
Of course, yeah. Technology is a little bit more like politics than we think it is. We have to make choices. And politics is a little bit more like technology than we think it is. It can keep getting better. It doesn't have to get stuck in the same position.
So in order to deepen the discussion, I like how you framed the problem we're facing today using Sid Meier's Civilization, the game.
Yeah.
I like playing it also.
One of my favorites, absolutely. So I played it since I was a child.
Wow.
Yeah.
Do you like the latest one, the 6?
Oh, it's great. And it's the one that uses so many ideas from plurality.
Yes.
It uses quadratic voting. So.
Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah. I mean, well, Civilization, the thing at a deep level that I love about it is that we live in this very commercial society where we think everything's about money. In Civilization 6, and we also think technology is just linear, it just progresses. And Civilization 6, all the Civilization games force us to think beyond that. There's many currencies, there's faith, there's military power, there's culture, there's money. And there's different paths that technology can take that you can choose. And so I think it helps free our imagination about the different ways that things go. But then also it has other wonderful things. It uses quadratic voting, this voting system that maybe we can talk about as part of the diplomatic negotiations. It has these future forms of government that are very related to our thoughts. So I think it's a great way for people to explore and play out the different possibilities for the future. And there's a museum here in Tokyo that does a great job of that as well, Muraikon.
Oh,
we're doing an event there on Friday, the Museum of Emerging Technology on Odaiba. And it's got some of the most exciting cultural content, I think, in the world in terms of getting the public to imagine different futures and imagine the importance of technology for connecting people.
Wow. Let me show your slide explaining the political ideologies.
Yeah.
It's kind of rooted into our kind of thinking about technology. Reid Hoffman, Elon Musk. Could you walk us through how it's rooted into our,
Yeah, so I mean, the way I think about it is that there's two stories that we usually tell about the future of technology. One is a big machine will come and do everything for us, and we can all just be sort of fat and happy living on a universal basic income and leave it all to the machine. There's actually a guy when I was in college who ran for the president of the student council who said, his name was Aaron Smolin, and he said, let the keep the good times rolling and the good stuff flowing, like alcohol.
Oh yeah.
While all the hard work is done by Smolin. And that's the attitude that
he really said that.
Yeah, that was his slogan.
Okay.
Yeah. And
did he got elected?
No, I don't think he got elected. But yeah. But anyway, that's what synthetic technocracy says. It says give all the choice to the big machine,
or AI,
and just enjoy the
we
ride.
can just party and not think of anything.
Exactly.
And have the basic income.
Exactly.
Okay.
So that's technocracy, and very much Reid Hoffman, very much. AI, very much books like Deep Utopia.
Right.
Another view is that technology will wipe away governments. It will wipe away communities. It will wipe away religions. It will wipe away any form of organizing. And everything is just capitalism, hyper-capitalism, anarcho-capitalism. And that's very much associated with like crypto world, with
like Peter Thiel.
With Peter Thiel, and with the man who's now the vice president nominee for the Republican Party, J.D. Vance. But both of these are pretty anti-democratic, like either turning everything over to the market or turning everything over to the benevolent machine are fundamentally anti-democratic. But we think that there is another way of thinking about things that's much more aligned with democracy. It lies underneath the internet. It lies underneath personal computing. It lies underneath things like Star Trek and Muraikon and the city of Shibuya's slogan. And that's what we want to tell the story of, so that it's as clear in people's minds as these stories of technocracy and libertarianism are.
So before asking how your idea is different, I want to go over the two ideas. So one is corporate libertarianism, which is individual sovereignty. Companies can disrupt things and
network
states.
Yeah.
And I feel that I like science fiction, and people kind of like these ideas. Why do you think there's some people supporting such kind of ideas, even though it's anti-democratic?
Well, look, I think that people want something concrete. Things that are complex are often harder. And it's a very Western tendency, I think, which is why these things are so successful in the West, that when things are complex, you look to make simplistic.
Yeah.
But, the Tao Te Ching from the Eastern tradition has an opposite approach,
right.
and Zen Buddhism as well. When things are complex, embrace the paradox,
right.
And that's harder, but it always invites curiosity. It never lets you grasp the truth. It always leaves you reaching. And in the, act of reaching, we stretch. And as we stretch, we grow.
Yes.
So that's what I, hope we can do with this. And not that everyone can grasp it all, not that it won't be challenging, but that it will invite your curiosity, that in fact, precisely in not giving you all the answers, it will give you the freedom to find them yourselves.
I agree. I think we should live with complexity and get used to a world of so complex.
Yeah.
So the second part, the second part is synthetic technocracy. So why people are, basic income, it seems nice, we can just party. Why are people supporting these ideas?
Well, I mean, look, I don't think that this is anything particularly new. There's an idea in my scripture, the Jewish Bible, that one of the primary prohibitions is against the making of idols. What is an idol? It's something that is seen as being all-powerful, that is made by the hands of man. And that's artificial general intelligence.
Okay.
Right? General intelligence means omniscient. Artificial means made by man, right? So all that artificial general intelligence is idolatry. And we know that people have been tempted by idolatry.
Right.
It's in every chapter of the Bible. People make the golden cow.
Yeah.
They make the thing. And so that's the temptation. It's the temptation that we can feel we made something that does it all.
Yeah, it makes us feel good.
Yeah, rather than humbling ourselves before the unknown, rather than reaching out into the void, we can grasp it, we can build it, and we can think we've done it all ourselves. And that's very tempting to technologists to be able to say that you've done that.
So having that said, what's your idea? How's your idea different from the two ideas, the plurality? How is it different?
Well, let me return for a moment to the Bible again.
Okay.
So if the Bible tells us not to do idolatry, let me turn to the Christian Bible. What does it tell us to do? It says that love thy neighbor as thyself, and peacemakers are the children of God. So plurality is just that. It's just to say that let's build technology that enables us to connect and work together in spite or actually harnessing our differences.
So you're saying that you have to like respect the individual, like, private properties, and also voting. Is that the rooted concept?
Well, those are one way that we work with each other, but intimacy is another way we work with each other, and conversations and parties and religious ceremonies. These are all different ways in which we work with each other. And they all have trade-offs. You know, in intimacy, it's a very small number of people who know each other very well, and they can do a lot together. They can bring new life into the world, maybe. But capitalism, private property, these span the globe, but they're very superficial. And the question is, can we do better? Can we make deeper connections across broader social distance? And that is what plurality is all about.
I think that's the challenging part, because there are kind of contradiction between the two ideas of being intimate and being broadened. How do you overcome that kind of contradiction? Yeah.
Well, I mean, there's nothing so surprising about this. Right now, we're coming to your audience over video.
Yeah.
There was a time in the past when you could only reach an audience like this through audio. That's a less deep form of connection.
I see.
To reach that breadth of distance, we needed to be more superficial. And before that, we had to have written words, which are more superficial. And before that, we couldn't even reach broad audience like that. We have to speak in words to someone there. So the whole history of communications technology has been about deepening the experience and broadening the people that we can reach.
So let me go back to discussion on Twitter or X right now. So before Elon Musk, or maybe in the 2010s, 20s, I liked to use Twitter because that made me feel that I'm connecting to the world, diverse people. But the more tweet got spread, or the more tweet got broader, there were a lot of net trolls and negative comments, negative feedback. So what happened to me is that I only said my honest opinion to my intimate friends or close friends. And when I tried to say something on Twitter, I kind of narrowed down the discussion. And that's, I think, the challenge we're facing right now. The more broadened, the more narrow your discussion will be. And you only speak to those who are close to you. How can you overcome that on your Plurality project?
Well, I mean, look, I think that effect that you're describing is really at the core of why maybe the internet hasn't been so good for communication. On the one hand, information can spread more broadly.
Yes.
But on the other hand, communication depends on context. If you and I don't share any context, we can't communicate.
No.
Because language is a context.
Right.
You can imagine two people who both speak English but also speak some other language, trying to communicate in that other language, not knowing that they both speak English. It won't do them any good. Until you have that shared understanding, there's no way to exchange. And the problem is that when information can travel fast, it's good that it travels fast, but if it travels outside of context, then people become unable to speak.
Exactly.
Because they can't use the context that they rely on. So an important part of the project of Plurality is how do we restore social context? How do we keep the awareness of who it is that we're talking to and why things are meaningful to people? And I don't think that that requires any giant inspiration or genius. It requires some basic principles that we've learned in the history of the media. In the 1920s, in the United States, the media was much more polarized even than it is now. But then after World War II, people said, we won't maintain a free press if we don't learn to serve the public interest. And they had two basic principles. We report as news things that are broadly accepted. And when there's divergence, we report the different sides of the controversy. That's the sort of thing that we need to do in social media, except in a much more complex world where you're not speaking to one audience in the United States. You're speaking to many different intersecting social groups.
in your slide, I just take a quickly, you mentioned about brain-to-brain communication. Is this one way, maybe in the future, to overcome that challenge of having, not just relying on language and context?
Yeah, well, brain-to-brain communication could allow a form of intimacy that is much deeper than humans have ever experienced with each other. And yet it also can allow for more diversity, because children who have to suppress their creativity in order to communicate in words and pictures could instead communicate their imaginations directly to their family or whoever else. But that is not a substitute for other ways that we communicate, like markets and voting and so forth. It's a complement for it, because we don't want a world where we're all one brain. We want a world where diversity expands, and as our technologies expand, we actually get more ways of interacting with each other. And all of those advances are valuable, but they don't bring us to one point, to one utopia. Instead, they actually expand our horizons. You know, the way I think about it is, some people, I think, picture that we're on the earth and there's all this dirt in the way, and we're throwing away the dirt to get down to the core of truth, the utopia. But I instead say that'll destroy the earth. Instead, we should plant trees. And the trees grow out into the infinite abyss beyond. And the further they get out, the further we get, the more there is to discover. The closer we get to the mystery that's out there, the further we get from the certainty at the core.
Do you think we should, we will be able to communicate more if we get rid of language and all the context, and we have this brain-to-brain communication?
Well, there are things that you can never communicate with language that you can communicate that way. But I think if we get rid of language, it will reduce our ability to communicate. We need to add more tools to the kids, not take things away.
So we need both, like language communication, also brain-to-brain communication.
And new forms of communication that we don't even understand now.
I see.
More diversity, more different things, expansion, not perfection.
So I kind of respect diversity. I value that much, but since I'm work at a startup, so it's very difficult to keep one team and at the same time respecting each other's diversity. And you're from Microsoft, and Satya Nadella said that one Microsoft is important these days. I know he has a lot of complex meanings, but what's the best balance between respecting plurality, diversity, and also having social binds or connection between the people?
Well, I don't think there has to be a trade-off between those. Or rather, there is a trade-off between those, but we can constantly push that trade-off back. So let me give you an example. Standard voting rules are that you vote for one person or another person. An alternative is you could vote for as many as you want. The benefit of that is that whoever gets a lot of votes will be someone that a lot of people can accept. So that's consensus, that's binding, that's cohesion.
I see.
But also, when that happens, then you don't need to have so few parties. Because if more parties are in, they don't distract from the other party.
I see. So like anyone can run for it.
If we have things that allow more interoperability, they actually allow more diversity at the same time.
So is that the picture you're showing the slide? So
yeah, exactly. So on the right-hand side is approval voting, which is a simple form of allowing more plurality through voting, but there's more sophisticated forms as well, like quadratic voting, or even things more sophisticated than quadratic voting.
I see.
We need to insist that our democratic systems evolve with the same strength and pace and benefit that our devices evolve.
So if you think John and Mary is the right candidate, you can pick both, or maybe Ano-san is in the list.
Yeah. For example, in the governor's race, I was just thinking about this. I had the honor of meeting Governor Koike today, and I think she's done a remarkable job governing the region, really helping revive it. And at the same time, I think Ano-san has a lot to add.
Yes.
So I would not like to have had to make a choice there, because I really would like to support Ano-san, but on the other hand, I think Governor Koike probably should win the race.
Right.
So I could have voted for both of them in this case, right?
I think there are a lot of people who want to vote for both of them. Yeah. Okay. So why is this not happening right now? Why is the democracy kind of mixed up at the moment?
Well, it is happening. Maybe it's not happening fast enough. No,
Okay.
it's not happening enough, but it happened in Taiwan.
Right.
That's why Taiwan went from 9% approval of the government a decade ago to 60% of the approval of the government now. Why they had an occupation of the parliament, and now they have the freest and fairest election, according to many monitors. And it's happening in pockets all over the place. It's happening on Wikipedia, etc. The future is here, but it's not evenly distributed.
I see.
And so we just need to help other people have an opportunity to benefit from that.
Do you think the reform or this change should be faster, or do you think this is the right pace for everyone to catch up and understand what's happening?
Well, I think there should be more different kinds of experiments going on.
I see.
So it's happening at a good pace in certain places along certain dimensions, but other places could try along other dimensions, other things. There's so many different things we discuss in the book that can help. And I hope there will be lots of different experiments in lots of places. For example, I was talking earlier today with the mayor here of Shibuya about the idea of facilitating the startup ecosystem by having government-supported meetups where people from different companies can come together and get free food to talk to each other. Because we know from the literature on startup ecosystems that it's having a place where you don't have to be tied to your company.
Right.
That helps create the new enterprises and social dynamism. So that's something that a policy I don't think anyone's tried. But that, someone could try here. But also you could try the things that Taiwan are trying or whatever. But there are so many things to try. We want more experiments. So the issue is not move fast and break things. It's move diversely with a range of people and heal things.
I was surprised by reading your book. You said, Taiwan is a little island, but they kind of have a diverse religion, diverse people, and they did it. So I think every country or every region can do it.
Yeah, I hope so.
In your book, also, you mentioned about real life examples, like changing workplace or changing media or changing health or environment. Could you elaborate on that? What kind of ideas do you have, first of all, to change the workplace?
Yeah, so right now, most workplaces are organized in a hierarchical way.
Yeah.
You have the boss man, and then the people underneath them, and so forth downwards. And the problem with that is not necessarily authority. You do need the people who are invested, who have a long history to have authority. I think the problem is more that hierarchy means that you have silos, and people don't cooperate across the organization. And this is a big problem that we dealt with when I was in the office of the Microsoft CTO.
Yeah.
Because one Microsoft, as you said, everyone in the different groups only thinks about their P&L, right?
Right.
But the question is, how do you maintain authority without siloing? And one way you can do that is just to have a market where people go and they start their own startup.
Yeah.
But then you don't get any of the benefit of the coordination of the company. So an alternative, which we've used to manage the book, is to have people have authority and have other people get it, but to do it using a mechanism that, so for example, if a bunch of people from different parts of the company are talking to each other and want to work together on a new project, and each of their divisions sees some benefit in it, each can make a small investment, and then the center matches those investments to allow those people to go work on it. So rather than the center saying, change and go do this, or the divisions each doing their own things, instead they can get the support from the center to overcome that compartmentalization.
So you're saying that the CEO or the boss will be like, not a manager, but like a facilitator or organizer.
Yeah.
Is that what Audrey Tan did? Because she's a minister, so she should have authority, but at the same time,
well, she only became a minister 2 years ago, and she stepped down 2 months ago. So most of the work she did was as a minister without portfolio.
Got it.
She had only 8 people working for her. And what she did is show people that there was public support for things and induce them to do it themselves, not actually order anyone to do anything.
Is that because of the system? Or maybe her character? Because I interviewed her once, and she she's very nice, very community, very open. Or do you think it was a system that went well, or the character of Audrey Tan?
Well, I think those things all interact with each other. Audrey is sort of a personal epitome of what's going on in Taiwan. She was born with a heart defect, which meant that until the age of 12, if she got angry, she could die. 50% chance that she would die. So she had to learn Taoist techniques to control her emotions. And that's why she's so chill. And that chillness enables her to embody this spirit of bringing people together, of, as the Tao Te Ching teaches, doing by not doing, of fading into the background and yet catalyzing change. But it's also the case that Taiwan has to maintain that calm because it is in such a fragile situation and has to navigate that. So she, I think, is an embodiment of that spirit.
It's interesting you mentioned chill because when we look at what's happening in the United States, everyone's angry and not chill. What's the difference between Taiwan and the United States?
Well, look, I think that it's often very easy to get very riled up if you have no problem to really deal with. If you're, there's famous story that the very long peace that Europe had until 1914 got everyone excited about war. Right? And I think it's similar in the United States. There's, things were on a very smooth trajectory for a very long time. And I think that makes everyone anxious. In Taiwan, they have major problems. And yet they have to maintain calm to deal with them.
I'm surprised because I visited Taiwan this January, the election. It was a very tough election, but people were trying to stay calm and not get overexcited. But when we see the United States, President election, President Trump, I'm very surprised what's happening in the United States because in your book, you kind of cited Hannah Arendt, and she famously quoted that compared to the French Revolution, the American Revolution, Americans demanded for freedom, whereas French demanded bread. So, America used to be like the center of democracy, and for a Japanese, it was like a textbook of democracy. So what happened to the United States? Are they mixed up, or what's your take on that?
Again, to quote the Tao Te Ching, it says that everyone knowing beauty is beautiful makes ugliness. Everyone knowing righteousness is righteous makes cruelty. And I think, there's a balance in the world of this sort. And so you have a period of prosperity, you have a period of calm, you have a period of safety, and people create the problems. And you have a period of insecurity, you have a period of challenge, you have a period, and people make the solutions, And so that's, I think, part of why Taiwan has gone how it has, and how, U.S. has gone how it has. And maybe Japan is starting to make its own problems a little bit now. So, it's not so surprising that this happens in the United States, but it means we need to learn to look to others. We need to learn to hear the stories of the problems. We need to learn to feel the problems that maybe are there that we don't see, so that we don't have to create them ourselves.
Let's go back to the real life example. So we talked about workplace and maybe media. How about healthcare and environment?
So, I think that the reason many diseases could be essentially cured if we were able to share medical information. Breast cancer is a great example. Almost all breast cancer could be eliminated or prevented if routine mammograms could be detected early for the breast cancer. But the reason why we can't do this is human eyes are not good enough to see it. And machines should be able to see it, but they need a lot of data. And the problem is those data are each and every hospital because of medical privacy.
It's a silo,
And of course, there's no reason you need to violate medical privacy to come up with the model. The model is just looking for things. It's not about saying this woman has this or that. But we haven't figured out how to overcome the siloing and to deal with the privacy concerns, even though clearly it's possible. So it's really a problem of the social technology of privacy preservation, of course,
Yeah.
cryptography to do that, but also how do you create the rights around the data and so forth. So, these tools, I believe, are the key to challenging a lot of disease.
Yeah.
Because then we'd be able to share the data, and then we could prevent so much disease.
So your basic argument on plurality is that respecting individuals' rights and privacy, but at the same time, kind of respecting collective intelligence. Is that the main structure of your?
Yeah, and it's not just individuals; it's communities.
Community, okay.
Mm-hmm. Community is, I think, that's the right way to think about privacy. Mm-hmm. Privacy is not really about the individual. Privacy is really about a community, because, of course, any conversation we have is about the context and not having things go outside of that friend group, like you were talking about before.
Yeah.
And every individual actually has many contexts. So the individual is not really the unit for it. It's just as inappropriate for an individual to take information from one context and share it in another context as it is for information about that individual to be shared with another person.
I see. So does this discussion connect to your last book about radical markets? Is this the same thing you're saying?
Well, I think that radical markets started to challenge a lot of the simplistic economics notions, but it was still coming from that world. Whereas I think plurality sort of moved beyond
forward.
it. Yeah.
I see. So do you think? So when I read like political thinkers in literature like Jean-Jacques Rousseau and Hannah Arendt, they kind of dreamed of this technology or plurality. Do you think it's happening right now because the technology has advanced since the age of Jean-Jacques Rousseau and Hannah Arendt?
Yeah, I mean, I think that digital technology builds the engines that harness social diversity.
Okay.
And, Leonardo da Vinci dreamed of flight.
Yes.
And we've thought of flight for a long time. We've thought of engines for a long time. But we got the capacity to actually take advantage of those things. And so, the dream of communism or whatever may have been a very interesting goal, but we didn't actually have the tools necessary to make that work beyond a small group of people. And we don't do that. We don't jump to that now, but we're getting the tools to progress towards that. As Karatani Kojin, who's one of the supporters of the book, has talked about.
I'm just curious, what do you think? What's the prediction of AI? How will AI evolve in the future?
I don't like to make too many predictions because I think it takes away our freedom. I think I'm not an optimist or a pessimist. I'm an agentist. I think we can choose what these things do for us. And I don't really believe that AI is a thing. I don't think there's some artificial autonomous intelligence out there. I think that there's a society that we have with lots of knowledge encoded in it, and then we can make maps of that. And that's all that the AI is doing. So I think there's lots of amazing things that those tools can do for us. But there's also lots of ways we could forget that they're tools and treat them as masters. And then they'll destroy us, not because they're so powerful or they turn into, some monster, but because we surrender to them.
So, Glenn, I think we need to wrap up. Any final comments, final thoughts, anything we haven't touched upon yet? Anything?
Well, I just have to say I'm so looking forward to continuing to have exchange with you and so many other people here in Japan. Clearly, there's energy for this in Japan, and I hope soon Japan, just like Taiwan, will be a leading model to the world of the way that
do you think Japan can be the leader?
Absolutely. I think that in many ways Japan already is. I think, as I mentioned, Mirai-kan here is an amazing example. Shibuya is doing great things, and I hope soon this won't be the Taiwan model. It'll be the free East Asia model.
Why is it happening outside of Western countries?
Because I think that there's a lot in the way that things work in the East, the philosophy that works in the East that resonates with this. I think the traditions of Taoism, the traditions of Buddhism have a lot to do with this, and also the separation that exists in the West between spirituality and technology does not exist in the East. People don't feel that there's this fight between the spiritual way of looking at things and the technology.
No, it's kind of merged together.
Exactly, and I think that's what we need to reclaim in the West.
And I think the Japanese people and maybe people in East Asia think that it's not black or white, it's something in between or something like that.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's sort of Taoism, to avoid the binaries, to see the things in the cycle and the way that they flow. And I hope that gives the opportunity for East Asia to be a leader in these things and to be a model to the world.
I hope so, and I hope I can contribute because I work for a media and maybe kind of set the model for Japanese style.
We would love that. We would love that. Yeah.
Okay, Glen Weyl-san, thank you for joining our conversation.
Yeah, my pleasure.